So let's look at what to do after 2 years. Well, we're going to calculate interest earned again. Do I have a place to store interest earned already? I do. I'm just going to reuse that variable. So I'm going to say interest earned is assigned a new value, and this time it's not the initial $1,000 that I want to multiply. It's the balance that the account is holding. Remember, the balance was holding that $1,100. So I'm going to take the balance and I'm going to multiply that by the rate percentage divided by 100. And then I'm going to update my balance. Well, I already have a variable that holds balance, so I'm not going to repeat that var. And I'm going to set it equal to that balance that's in there right now plus the interest earned. And then let's check and make sure we got that 1210. So first I got my 1100, and next I got my 1210. Okay, so I am on the right track. So let's go into the third year. And so at the third year, let me put a comment in here that says after 2 years. So now we're going to look at after 3 years. Well, the interest earned is going to be the 1210. Well, the 1210 is in the balance. And we're going to multiply that by the rate, which is the rate percentage divided by 100. Well, that's actually exactly the same line here. Okay. Then I want to update the balance by adding in that interest earned. Oh, well, that's exactly this line here. And then I want to check and make sure I got the balance right. Okay. And so it should be 1331 now when we run it. So let's save it and see if it works. And there we did. We got the right numbers all the way through. Now, what if it was 5 years or 10 years? We can't just keep adding blocks of code because we're going to allow the user to enter in that number of years. So we want to use a loop in order to increment that interest earned and add it to our balance. Well, if you notice, these two sections are exactly the same, so that's easy to make a loop for. This one is a little different. We're using this initial instead of the balance. Is there some way that we could make that be the same code? What if at year 0, when we went to the bank and we had our initial deposit of $1,000, we thought of it as our balance is being set to that initial value right away. So this is our initial deposit into the bank. Now, instead of using initial here, we could use balance. Because the first time through, it is the same. The balance is the same as the initial. Well, let's check and make sure that's still working correctly before we put in the loop. If we can't write the code correctly without the loop, it's certainly not going to work with the loop. Okay, so the first time through, it's still 1100, then 1210, and then 1331. Okay, we are declaring this interest earned variable, and let's move that outside and just declare it and set it to nothing so that we can make those lines exactly the same. Now we declared balance up here, so we also can take the var off there because we only want one balance for our bank account. We want that balance to be increasing. We're not opening new bank accounts, so we want to use that same balance variable. Okay, so now that the code is exactly the same, we can do a loop. Now, we know how many years. We don't know exactly if it's what the user's going to type in, but we know that there will be a variable that has the number of years. So we can use a for loop. So let's say a for loop, and I is a nice counting number, so we're going to put I started at 0. Then while I is less than, well, how many times do we want to go through? Well, this time it's 3. So we could put the 3 in there. And we could say increment I each time. What do we want to do inside that loop? Well, we want to run this code for updating the balance. So when I is 0, it's the first year. When I is 1, it's the second year. When I is 2, it's the third year. When I is 3, we stop. So we can get rid of that code because we're doing that in the loop now. So let's see if it works. So we successfully moved that into the loop. Now, if we want to go for maybe 5 years, now this loop isn't going to work correctly because we are only going up to 3. But we could use that variable years there. So instead of saying, well, I is less than 3, let's say I is less than whatever is being stored in years. Now, if we go 5 years, you see we still get the correct number after 3 years, but we can keep going up to the 5 years. So we're in pretty good shape. What we need to do now is to let the user actually enter the values. So let's change this to a prompt. First, we're going to ask, what is your initial investment? Now, I want this to be a number. So I'm going to go ahead and explicitly convert it to a number. Then I don't even have to think about what the implicit conversions might be. Okay, same thing for the next one. Prompt. What is the interest rate in percent? Well, that one too, I want to make sure it's a number. It might be implicitly converted to a number when I do my calculations, but I don't even want to have to think about that. So I'm just going to put it within the number function. So the result of the prompt will be converted to a number. And well, we know this one should be a number too, so I'll just put that number right away. Then my prompt. And then I'm going to say, okay. Well, let's see if it works. Well, I know the numbers for 1,000, so let me use those same numbers, 10% and 3 years. Oh, it's still working, so very good. Now, if we use different numbers, we want to make sure it's still working. So let's run it again. Let's say I only have $100, and I'm only going to earn 5% interest. And I'm going to leave it for 10 years. Well, that makes sense. You're earning about $5 a year. And so it looks pretty good, except that the program isn't asking you for what the balance is every year. the program is asking you to alert how much they've earned after the number of years based on what they entered. So let's take our alert out of the for loop. And in fact, let's indent our statements inside the for loop so we know they're in there. And we'll remove this alert and put it on the outside. Now let's put in a well-labeled result. The balance after, well, how many years? Well, years. Is now, and the balance. Oh, and then maybe we better say at the interest rate. And we can put white space anywhere. So I'll do a new line. And that's my rate percentage. And then let's put a percent sign on there so it looks nice and neat. Now, it wouldn't surprise me if I have a typo in there, but let's save it and see. Okay, well, I know the result. Oh, I have a typo in there somewhere, so let's debug so it can tell me where that is. Unexpected token on line 15. Unexpected token on line 15. So I have the balance plus years. Oh, I put that period outside of the string, and so it didn't know what the period meant, and then it got confused by the parentheses. Okay, so I did have a typo in there. And so let's run it again. I'll put the standard numbers in so that I know, make sure it works, because I know what answer to look for there. Okay, so the balance after 3 is now $13.31 at an interest rate of 10%. Okay, so I'm missing a word, 3 years. So I'll fix that. Run it again. And it's looking pretty nice. Now, I should just double check that different numbers still work. So now I'm going to invest $50. I'm only going to earn 1%. So, and then I'll just do 1 year. So, oh look, I don't have my numbers formatted very nicely, do I? It says that I'm going to have $50.5, and that's $50.50. And that does look right at 1% to have earned 50 cents, but it doesn't look like 50 cents. So let me change the balance to say .to fixed with 2 decimal places. Go ahead and refresh it. And we'll try the same one. We have $50. We're going to get 1% on it. So we're going to earn 50 cents in 1 year. And that's going to give us 50/50. Okay. So there we have it. We have our working program.